Take nothing personally. Sadness, fear, anger, even those things that seem to be mostly to do with who you are. Fear is human fear, anger is human anger, sadness is human sadness. Not really personal. And the mind is the human mind. And its structures, the way it works. Conditioned human mind. And a mind-based identity, also conditioned. Nothing personal anywhere. A new identity is emerging that's very different from the personalized sense of self. Some purists would say, well, it's no identity at all, that's no self. Well, it depends on how you want to use language. I'd say a new identity is emerging. Who you are beyond the narrow, personalized sense of me. To some extent, that still operates a little bit. The framework of your life, you remember things. You still have a name, probably. But you're not seeking an identity and accumulating stuff around your name, which is an unconscious process. Starts as soon as you learn your name, which you didn't even choose. And then stuff accumulates around it, and me. The other thing I remember from just reading the message from the Hopi elders, do everything in a sacred manner. And that's exactly what we addressed this morning. So that you cannot do something in a sacred manner if it's a means to an end. If this moment is a means to an end. Sacred action implies that you are completely present with that action and you give it your full attention. You honor this now. Then that's what I called this morning quality. High quality really is that sacredness that comes into your life more and more. It doesn't mean necessarily that you become extremely slow from now on. Although at times, as this new thing comes into your life, it may be that alone in your room, you might be slowly practicing picking something up without making it into a means to an end. It's pick up a pen, an object, the hand moves towards it. You pick it up, and even that movement is not a means to an end. And you look at it, and let it be so completely that labels are unnecessary in the mind. There's simply presence, the field of presence in which it appears. That's you. And put it down. So you performed an action in the field of awareness that's sacred. And so at first you may slow down here and there, and gradually you can resume perhaps not your normal speed, because normal speed is a bit mad, but you can do things naturally, a natural flow to doing. And if the situation requires it, it may well be that the flow is a fast flow, and yet you're present in every movement. Even while you're running, you're present with every movement, not trying to reach a mental projection of me over there where I would like to be. Running without the mental projection of me over there, just me here. Movement, energy moving, beautiful. And again, it's a better quality running. There was an interesting film some years ago in which somebody does a lot of running. And I remember the way he looks when he's running. He's as Forrest Gump. It's as if he were standing still, and his head goes like that. Not, and that happens to be a film who is about a man, fictitious person, who his state is very similar to the enlightened state, except that he is pre-thought. But his connectedness, his oneness, is the same as the enlightened state. He doesn't know it. So things come to him easily, whatever he needs. He does heroic things in the war in that film, and yet claims no credit. Nobody did it. It just happened. So that's a beautiful example of enlightened state, not really what we call the state of becoming free of thinking, but not yet having gone through the thinking state, and thereby live in that state of greater connectedness. But we can't go that way. A similar film many years earlier, if you want to watch it and haven't seen it yet, about also a fictitious person in a similar state, is called Being There. So that's, both these films show how things become helpful, how life cooperates with you when you live in that way of non-resistance and not having a personalized me that needs, wants and claims and resists, that obstructs the flow. And so life becomes a sacred thing. It always was, but we didn't know it. We may have a few questions, if there are any. Just a few words about questions in general. There may, by the way, be more questions than answers here. No question matters that much, because this is not about understanding ultimately. What you need to understand is easy. It's very little. The rest isn't to do with working something out mentally. And yet, a few questions may arise. I would encourage vital questions that concern yourself, or maybe somebody close to you, or your practicing of presence, the arising of presence in you, or the obstacles to the arising of presence in you, or the pain body. Questions like that, vital, immediate, true. And then there are other questions that are not so helpful, but they may be interesting, very interesting, but they lack the vitality. As an example would be, please explain the difference between your concept of presence and the Buddhist concept of sunyata. It's interesting, but it's a thought-based mind question, and if we were here for many weeks, maybe we could address that. Another question that is not vital, an example would be, what are we Americans supposed to do in this situation? What are we supposed to do? Now, if President Bush came in here and asked that question, it would be real. And then perhaps, if we are still enough, an answer would come. But if you ask that question, and it's a hypothetical question. If you were in command, what would you do? Well, I'm not. That's why I don't know what to do. Somebody who doesn't like public speaking handed me a question earlier, so I'll start with that one. And quite a few people may have a similar question, so it'll be. Most questions, if they are vital, will be helpful to almost everybody. The answers, if there are any answers, will be helpful to everyone. Can you talk about community, sangha? That's the Buddhist word for community. Would you suggest meeting in small groups to practice together? And what would we do exactly? And how can we avoid the various trappings of ego, rituals, and organizations? Thank you so much for your teachings. Thank you. Many people are asking about meeting in small groups, and many people are already meeting in small groups once a week or whatever in their local communities, cities, towns. And you may already have a group at home, or you may be part of a group, or the possibility of having or joining a group may have already come up in your life. It's helpful, it certainly is helpful to sit with a group of people in a shared space of presence, that it truly is helpful. If you don't have a group, that's fine. Other people around you will begin to ask questions, begin to wake up. As you are waking up, others around you will begin to wake up, and you may well find yourself having an informal group. You never wanted to set up a group, and suddenly there are a few people around you who are also waking up. And so you get together occasionally, and it can arise naturally without any prior planning. That's possible too. And the best things arise in that way. Or you may have a slightly more formal setting where you open your home and invite people who have read the book to come and sit together. And there are various ways then of doing this. It's not so much a doing, but the least risky way of doing this is to invite people in, sit together in stillness for a while. Perhaps at the very beginning listen to some inspiring music, because everybody comes in with the agitated mind energy often after work or whenever they come. So a little bit of music, then silence, shared stillness. Then you could listen to a tape for half an hour or an hour, or a video, and then have another period of silence and go home. Then there's very little danger of mind interference. Or you could have a more active group in which people share of their own lives, how presence has come into their lives or obstacles they are meeting. And that requires one or two people of the group to be able to hold the space of presence, to hold that spaciousness, to be in that state of awareness. Otherwise, it can become a mind-dominated group setting, and everybody begins to talk, expressing their viewpoints. And suddenly, presence is gone. So if there are one or two, perhaps you yourself, it makes a difference if there's one person who is not there as a person, but as a spaciousness, and just be there. And sometimes words may come out of that spaciousness that looks like a person. Not to be careful that it doesn't become a social gathering. There's nothing wrong with social gatherings, but most social gatherings are dominated by mind. So it's a field of presence that people enter, and yet avoiding all kind of self-consciousness about it. Or some people like to have candles, others don't want any paraphernalia. Ritual was mentioned here. Some people like a little bit of ritual. My only ritual is the bell. There are candles. Some people will like it. Some people will be turned off by it. Somebody had a group, somebody I know, and quite a few people went, and then one man who went there the first time said, "It was so spooky, all these candles." And keep ritual, don't overdo ritual, and get simple. I don't want to create an organization as such, because as the questioner mentions, there's always egoic things that happen in organizations, but some kind of place where people can find out who is running local groups. I'm looking at that at the moment, and so at some point there may be on my website local groups mentioned. It may start soon, and your group may be part of that. We'll have to look without any organization as such, just so that people can find out where there are groups. But even if you have no formal group, as you are awakening, there will be people around you who are also awakening. And so almost inevitably, some kind of community does arise, even if there's never anything formal. If you're working one-on-one and perhaps you're already a counselor or do some other kind of work with people on a physical body work or whatever kind of work, you may find that more and more presence comes in and takes over. And you enter that state whenever you sit with someone or be with someone. And for any counselors, as you already probably know, the main qualification to be a therapist, an effective therapist, is not, I would disagree with Freud, who said, you need to have understood your own dreams. That's helpful too, but you need to be able to listen, truly listen. Anybody who can truly listen would be already effective as a counselor. And true listening means a state of complete non-conceptualization, labeling, judging, complete openness. In the same way that you look at a tree, whatever is needed comes out of that state. It may not even come through you. Within that spaciousness, it may come through the other person. That other person has a question, a problem, and suddenly realizes what the answer is, or suddenly realizes that the problem is meaningless and the question disappears. Or the answer comes through you. Suddenly you find yourself saying something. And always and many of you will be working, if only informally, working isn't the right word, being with people, becoming comfortable with not knowing. Is the essence also of that kind of listening and of being with people, is never feeling that I know or I should know, but I don't know. And people may sometimes come with problems that look beyond solution. I don't know. So not feeling that you need to know or that you do know, you should know. Become comfortable with entering the space of not knowing. Then greater intelligence can operate through you. And that's the alert presence. You only know what is vital for you to know or for that situation. You won't know more than that. And you won't know it beforehand. And probably afterwards you'll forget what you said. At the last retreat, somebody asked me, can you explain again what you said yesterday about this or that? And I had forgotten. And that person hadn't quite understood, perhaps was a little bit hard of hearing, and hadn't understood. I had already said it, but I couldn't remember what I had said. But somebody in the audience remembered it and said it, and then I repeated it, and everybody laughed. Because when these words came out of my mouth, they were not fresh and new, they were lacking aliveness. I repeated the same words that I had said the previous day, but because somebody reminded me what I said, they came out of my mouth again, and they were so flat and lifeless that everybody laughed. And that is the truth that you remember. It lacks the power to transform. It lacks transformative power when it comes from memory. And if it arises out of presence, it has transformative power. And it might be, whatever you say, may be very simple. And yet there's a power to that. You're also free, if you want to say a few words about our gathering, feel free. If it's not a question, that's fine too. And if it's a question, feel free to ask. A young man came to me yesterday. I don't know if he wants to ask his question here now. It could be that all questions have already dissolved.
It concerns the body. I got along with you talking, sharing how the conditioned mind stops us from being in presence. And what I observe is that the body physically is constantly evaluating situations, judging, so to speak, this feels good, this feels bad, this is pleasurable. And that is before, often, not always, before I perceive that there is a conceptualizing taking place. Or you asked us to observe nature, to learn from nature. And what has already been concerning me also for a long time is when I observe animals who are living bodies like we are, they are not conceptualizing, I guess, but like they are judging, they are fighting for dominance or territories. So I feel like it's not only somehow the conditioned mind that seems to spark up duality for whatever it means in the end, but it is something physical also. And the third facet of that really is close to me, that when there is a trauma early in life, it seems to be a physical memory. It's before the concepts of thinking starts, like a reflex. It can dominate your life, but it's not really a thinking. So this is my question concerning the body.
Thank you. Thank you. The body carries a lot of inherits, because it is inherited from the past. The DNA contains the information from the past, carries a lot of the stuff that is connected with the condition of separateness, of being a separate me. So that is already carried almost in the cells of the body, one could say. The pain body I mentioned is already in you before thinking starts. The pain body is already there. A baby already comes into this world with an accumulation of past history in the body, of past suffering in the body. And some babies, you may have found, cry a lot. Other babies cry relatively little, and it's to do with the density of the pain body. So when things happen, often that deep-seated conditioning is already operating in you, but it is connected with mind. It is the outcome of thousands and thousands of years of mind identification and seeing yourself as a separate entity, a me. Animals, if you look at animals, you see, compared to humans, they live in a world that is free of problems. They don't carry the heaviness of a personalized sense of me. And yet, yes, they are involved in fights. Animals have their limitations. An animal can express love mostly only towards its offspring, except animals that live very close to human beings. So animals have their own limitations, but when you look at the natural world, you see both things. You see great harmony, which is true. There's the harmony of the totality. You see also animals living in a problem-free state, but occasionally they go out and fight and kill. And then they walk again, or they sleep, or they rest. And then there's another, perhaps two males fighting for dominance. And so they enter the periods of struggle and fight, but don't carry it around as a me. So I describe in the book, I observe ducks swimming in the water, and occasionally they get into a fight for some reason, perhaps territorials. They need a little bit of space around, and then they separate, flap their wings a few times, stand up on the water and swim off in opposite directions. And then they swim just like Forrest Gump runs. When they swim, they go. And the past is immediately relinquished. Yes, there is struggle there too. It's not animals. Every animal has its limitations. An animal is deeply connected to the source, hasn't gone out that far, but also experiences the condition of separateness. But nothing is separate from your consciousness. So whatever you see on this planet is not totally separate from your consciousness. So as your consciousness changes, you may find changes in nature taking place also. If your consciousness is a fearful state, your state of mind is one of fear and struggle for survival, you see the reflection of the fear and the struggle for survival everywhere. And there's a strange saying in the Bible and other more recent so-called prophecies, the lion shall lie with the lamb, and other prophecies concerning animals, that as humans undergo a shift in consciousness, animals also undergo a transformation. To a large extent, when you observe animals in their, yes, not a state of complete perfection, they don't suffer, because to suffer you need a self who suffers, but they have pain, they go through pain. A lot of pain, of course, is inflicted on them by humans, but they also go through some pain inflicted by other animals. No doubt. And yet, there's a great balance in the totality of nature. In the animal kingdom and the totality, there's great balance. And there is, despite what seems like disharmony when one animal kills another and eats it, there is a harmony that pervades the whole, the totality of nature. And if you look at the individual animal, you can still learn a great deal from it, even though it has its limitations. See how 90% of the time the animal is at ease with itself and its surroundings. Some animals are continuously alert because there could be an enemy somewhere. So birds are in a continuous state of alertness, but that is not fear. When you watch a bird, to learn about animals you need to watch, and you learn a great deal that a bird is continuously going. And it's not a state of fear, It's simply a state of alertness. So I don't want to idealize the animal kingdom, because yes, it has a downside, and anybody who owns a cat, well, nobody owns a cat, but anybody who is owned by a cat knows, you taste the polarities. This beautiful creature that lives, when it walks, such harmony, such flow. When it rests completely. Many artists have painted an animal, cats at rest, that shape itself, such harmony. When it moves into a new territory, but it stops, it pauses, it looks. It doesn't hurry, it just goes. Before it jumps, it looks. And then you can see it imagines itself there, and then the body follows. And then it comes home and it tears apart a beautiful bird. And your whole living room is full of feathers. It's dreadful. It doesn't need the bird, it gets plenty of food, and yet it cannot help it. It is compulsively driven to attack the bird, or the mouse, or the rat, or the squirrel. Compulsively driven, it cannot get rid of 500,000 years or 1,000,000 years of conditioning, because for a long time it lived on these creatures. It can't get rid of that. So even seeing a bird, its mouth quivers. Somebody who visited me, I had 3 cats at some point, and that cat had just caught or killed a bird, and that woman picked up the cat and said, "You shouldn't be doing that." And the woman had come to me for a counseling session. She couldn't get rid of deep-seated forms of conditioning from only 40 years, and the cat 1,000,000 years. So you can, there's always the two sides, the animal king. There's great beauty and harmony, but if you look at humans, many humans are in a continuous state of disharmony and unease with their surroundings. They are not in alignment with life. They don't fit in as animals do. In that sense, animals still express a greater wholeness than humans, despite the shortcomings, the limitations of their form. And so I would say you can still learn a great deal from watching the animal kingdom. Reactions, the question also touched on. Some reactions that you have seem to come before thought processes start. Some reactions seem to be prior to thought processes. And that is the conditioning of the body, conditioned for thousands of years by thought into a state of fearful contraction, which is every body carries a pain body, and therefore every body lives, it's normal, so it's hard to detect because everybody has it, almost. everybody lives in a state of fearful contraction. The state of fear is already in the DNA. If they could examine exactly what is in the DNA, there would be a lot of information about you better be fearful. The body has already built in fear, and fear is the predominant energy field of each pain body, even if it seems to be predominantly angry or it seems to be predominantly sad or heavy. You can still see fear is always an essential ingredient of the separate state of being. So when people are born already with fear built into the structure of the body, and that is what reacts. And that is how do we get rid of that deep-seated conditioning. And then, of course, there's the mind, and they feed each other. The fear that is already in the inherited pain body energizes fearful mind structures, and the fearful egoic mind structures give fuel to what is already in the body. So that vicious circle, how do we get rid of so much conditioning, collective conditioning that goes back such a long time? Simply through knowing it, watching it as it arises, being alert enough so that it doesn't trick you into becoming something that it is not, which is a person, a projection, a story, so that you can observe it directly. That's why sitting here is, in this energy field of presence, is the greatest thing you can do to dissolve conditioning. Not that you are saying, I am dissolving my conditioning. It is being dissolved through presence, the arising of presence, and the remaining conditioning will then come up, will even accelerate, come up, more of it will come up all at once. And you can watch it in the body. So having attention in the body is essential, because the bodily reactions you can then watch, and no more is needed than to place your attention on it, that spaciousness that knows it's there. So when something happens, a situation happens, and you might remember, okay, say yes to this moment, that's important. And you say yes. But then you feel inside the body, and you may realize, oh, I've said yes mentally and verbally, and yet my body is still saying no. So this is important, because that when we speak of yes and no as an inner state and a way of being with things, it's important that you should not overlook a deep-seated no that may be inside your body as a contraction or a tightness. And up here you might be saying yes, and the body is all the time is saying no. And here you might say, oh, I've forgiven this situation completely. There's nothing left. And you're not in touch with your body, and you can feel it's tight all over here or wherever it is. And then, oh, maybe the forgiveness hasn't seeped into the cells of my body. Maybe the no is just hasn't gone that deep yet. And then that's all that is needed is for you to accept that it's not here yet. Oh, it's not here yet. There's still a no in the body. It's interesting. Not feeling that I need to get rid of that, but simply say, that's how it is. It's still there. And then feel it. Sense it. The contraction is still there. Oh. And don't need to draw conclusions. I haven't made it yet. Oh. So whatever is there as presence arises, it will come to the surface, whether it is in the body or whether it is mind. The two go together. Whether it's the inherited conditioning of the body, part of the human condition, it will come up. Situations and challenges will bring it out. And the more presence arises, the more quickly these things will emerge. But you can take it. There's enough. Life knows exactly what you can take. And as presence arises, life says it's time to accelerate. And that's happening even collectively. There are great collective challenges. It's time for this acceleration to happen. So, being with the body, there is a covering, there is the pain body, there's the conditioning that's in there, and so to speak, underneath it is what one person suggested we should call the joy body. And that is there, underneath a million years of conditioning. And so, as human consciousness becomes transformed, perhaps the animal kingdom will go through a transformation too. But humans need it more desperately than the animals. The animals would be fine for another million years and the planet would be happy with them. Humans won't be fine for another 100 years and the planet won't be happy with them.
Thank you. You've answered most of the question. Thank you for being here, Eckhart.
Thank you.
My question concerns practice.
Yeah.
When we first start and the presence arises, it seems that it's covered over very quickly. And if you want to look at it from the point of the pain body, it seems that the reservoir is endless. As each of these arisings cumulative, does it make the next one more probable, or does the old soul have to go on the road again?
Oh, could you repeat that, please?
The whole thing?
No, just the last question.
Is the arising of presence cumulative? In other words, does each one, when you have had the experience, make the next experience more probable? Or does, I said, the old soul have to go to the road again and make all the actions again in exact order?
It does get easier. Presence intensifies. Often, for a while, the challenges also intensify as presence intensifies. But at times it seems I'm falling back. I'm falling back into my old state of consciousness. I was present for a while and now some challenge has pulled me back into a state I thought I'd left behind long ago. But that's only temporary. Once presence arises, it can be obscured, but you can never go back to the old mind identification. The momentum of presence is already there. It may be if your mind conditioning, mental, emotional conditioning has great density and the clouds come back. There was sunshine, the clouds parted, and then the clouds come back. If you need some disaster, some loss, some breakdown, then it'll happen to you so that presence can manifest more freely through you. But you are here to make that unnecessary, except in those cases where it's still necessary. You don't need to ask, when am I going to be free? We need to be careful not to create some future state or goal that we need to achieve, for example, to become free of my pain body. I'm waiting. When? And there's more stuff coming up. But you've only perhaps been conscious of your pain body for a year or 2 or 5 or 10, which is not a lot. It's been there for thousands and thousands of years. So it is happening fairly quickly. But even to ask, how much longer do I have to live with my pain? Don't create a state that you need to arrive at. Be with your pain and let it be. It's not that bad. It's there, yes. Don't label it even. Allow it to be. That's the power of surrender. Often the mind can come in and say, when? I want to be free. You're free already. You can be free even if there's still pain operating in you. If the pain is no longer mistaken for who you are, is no longer made into a personalized sense of self, a me, you can be free, and yet periodically you may still carry your pain body, and it may get triggered, and you recognize it as the pain body, but it's not who you are. It doesn't become a story in the head. It does not energize thought patterns in the head, egoic mind patterns. It doesn't turn into an unhappy me. It's simply leftover pain. And you carry it, and what you do with it by allowing it to be, it's no longer, you're not doing it for yourself. It doesn't really matter anymore to you when you become free of the pain body being an unhappy me. The work that you're doing is you are dissolving human pain. And it's far more than, it seems you're just doing it for yourself, but the repercussions are much vaster than that. One human being dissolving his or her pain has an enormous effect on the rest, because all humans, everything else, but humans are connected with each other at a deeper, there is one organism, one collective human psyche. And whatever happens, happens within that one collective human psyche, including us, including you, surrendering when the pain arises and allowing it to be and saying, that's what is. It is as it is. Let it be. And so there is a spaciousness that is suddenly there. And that is what is arising in the collective organism, the collective psychic organism of humanity. This group is an essential part of that. And then there's the terrorists. Total insanity, extreme manifestations of an undercurrent of insanity that is in the whole of humanity, extreme manifestations of that, killing themselves and thousands of people in extreme acts of madness, that is also ultimately not outside of you. And so whatever happens within you has enormous effect on the rest of humanity. You're not in it for yourself. So enjoy the adventure of disidentifying from all that conditioning, the arising of presence, asking the question, how much longer can only obscure presence? Presence is intensifying, it is accelerating, I know that. And the more you stop asking how much longer, or do we have to go on indefinitely, the more quickly it accelerates, because the more as you drop that question, you relinquish future. Let go of future, looking to future as that which is going to solve your pain, your problems. It's not. So how much longer? I respect your question. Many people have that question. I've been asked it many times. But ultimately, asking yourself that question isn't helpful because it can easily lead to the next thing, which is a complaint. The next thought after asking that question, well, do I have to go on and on with that pain? Just be with the simplicity of this moment. And whatever it is that arises, be okay with that. Okay. It is as it is. That is already salvation. And so you don't need the future for salvation. Trust that the present moment is all you need, and realize how the enormous power that is there. And any thought, and many thoughts will arise in the mind that are perhaps cunningly designed to take you out of the now. They may be very logical, sensible thoughts or questions, but they are designed to take you out so that you can look to the future and then live in an unsatisfactory present again. So important. See how the mind has great intelligence. Ultimately, the intelligence is only a small part of the one great intelligence. And the egoic mind often uses its intelligence to perpetuate its own temporary form as the egoic mind. So it can be quite clever, and it can trick you very easily. Always back to now. You are already, as the beautiful line in the Course in Miracle, it is at this moment that salvation is offered to you, and it is at this moment that you can accept it. No other time. And that is the truth. This moment.
I accept it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name's Michael, and I realize that I may be leaving the room before you answer my question because I have a flight I have to take, and shortly after 4:30 I may be leaving. So I want to say that I'm not interested in the answer if you're still talking when I leave.
Okay. It won't be. It's not your pain body driving you.
And I was just one of the founders here. I called him about 1.5 years ago in Indonesia when I was having a very difficult time with the business I work in there. And I would read your book at night, and it would be a wonderful way to go to sleep. And then I called him and I said, you must read this book. And he did, and then contacted the people necessary to bring you here. So I'm just happy to have played a part in that. And also the timing of you being here after what's happened, and so many of us, this is being the largest gathering, I'm hopeful somehow that something will generate from this group. I'm not hopeful. I know, I sense it will already.
Yes.
And there are two things that I wanted to ask about. One is I was on the roof of my apartment that last Tuesday, and I saw the trade centers and watched the South Tower go down. And I've been very shaken by this, and in a way well, it looks like flashbacks. I always wondered what the Vietnam veterans, why they just couldn't get over these flashbacks, why they were so screwed up somehow. And I have never been in a combat zone, so seeing this was very similar. Almost as I'm asking this, I can feel that it's the mind staying busy with these pictures. And I still wanted to mention it because there's in a way, all this appreciation for the fragility and the vulnerability that I feel in so much crying. And just this morning, I mailed a small package in the post office, and it said, you must have identification to mail a package. And I thought, oh, how sad. We have to do this. And when I asked the postal lady if she would like to see identification, she just looked into my eyes and said, oh, no. She just knew. And then I said something about what I had seen, and we were both crying. And so I never thought I'd be in a post office crying with the postal worker, especially postal workers. And so I see so much beauty coming out of this and the kinds of things people are saying here. And yeah, maybe I've answered my question, just to see that the beauty is so much more than.
Yes.
And the other thing is maybe is perhaps an answer to this, is that last night I was in the dining hall with my friend Alan, who also works here, and I was asking him about his family, and he said that his mother passed away recently, and she had Alzheimer's, and she was 79. And I said, oh, well, when did she get it? And he said, when she was 59. And I went, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm just so indulging in these emotional depressions and feeling lonely, and I felt this just lightness. Okay, I'm so grateful not to have Alzheimer's. And I went and sat down to the most beautiful woman I could find in the dining hall, and I said, I'm Michael, I'd like to meet you. And I had a wonderful time meeting her, and later I said, I don't know if you're married or gay or have a boyfriend, but I'd like to meet you again. And she lived in Atlanta. And she said she was with someone, and I felt no disappointment. It was just, oh, this wonderful connection happened. And the same thing this morning. There's a very lovely woman here in the room who I felt very shaky to go up to her, and she might say, get away from me. But no, we went to the lake and connected so deeply, just in a space of silence. And I said something about a girlfriend I've been on and off with, and she pointed to her finger and said, oh, well, I'm married. And somehow none of that mattered. And there's just, I feel like this somehow a friendship, a connection, not needing to be followed up by anything other than the meeting.
Yes.
And the question is really is a technique. I feel like I've now got this technique called, oh, you're grateful not to have Alzheimer's, so just go out and meet everybody on the planet. And not just beautiful women, but
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's helpful. Thank you. But I'd also like to thank you, because if it weren't for you, although there's nothing personal in it, just it happens that we are here. We wouldn't be here at this time if you hadn't sent the book to your friend. So none of us would be here at this time. It's all connected in such ways that you could never work out through your mind how deeply everything and everyone is connected. Thank you. So, and many people connected at a deep level with others here, not man, woman, 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 man, man, who knows. Ultimately, that is just the form identity, and so that attraction may be there or may not be there, but there's a deeper connection here beyond form, beyond name and form. I forget most names of people I meet, and yet I meet them very deeply. I very much feel whenever I meet, I know them. I don't remember the names, and yet it is always holy. The meeting is always sacred. And when you're not coming from an egoic sense of self, the beautiful thing is you neither want something from somebody, nor do you fear them. Because in all normal egoic human interactions, you either want something from the other human being, or you fear that they might do something, or say something, or injure you in some way, or diminish you in some way. So most human egoic interactions are governed by these two movements of wanting. And again, the form, you may feel an attraction on the level of form, and yet feel a deeper connection beyond form at the same time, without feeling, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this attraction on the form level, I should be beyond that by now. No, as long as you are here as a form, you might, on that level, you may feel an attraction, and it's to do with being here as a physical form, and yet there's something far deeper than that operating now. So when you're here only as a person, as my friend Katie says, personalities don't love, they want something. They may be pretending that they are loving you, but they want something, the personalities, the persons. Or they fear something. So it's how wonderful to go beyond that and for the first time truly be with another human being and the reality of that other human being, beyond fearing or wanting. All right.
It has been my experience that, as you say, when I am sufficiently quiet, the answers to my questions arise inside me. In this current situation, I haven't been quiet enough for that to happen, and I'd appreciate your help. I have very recently separated from my partner of many years. During this retreat, grief and anger have arisen many times, thoughts and feelings together. I catch it, and I think, there it is, the pain body feeding itself with this story again, or something to that effect. Sure enough, even as I observe and accept the phenomena, it dissolves almost as quickly as it arises. Suffering ends almost as quickly as it begins. My concern is that I may be using this practice to avoid feeling painful feelings that are simply part of being human.
Thank you. Thank you. That's an important question. In many ways, what we call being human is being trapped in the egoic condition. So there are many states that we have been calling human that we are going beyond. The characteristic of being human until now has been that you manifested insanity to greater or lesser degree. The human condition has a strong element of insanity. But here, allowing a feeling completely is actually the opposite of not feeling it or wanting to be rid of it or terminating it before it has come up fully. No. Allowing it to be is the opposite of saying no to it. there is no greater state of openness than to say to any feeling, I let you be here. You are here, and that's how it is. Not the slightest rejection of it. But the miracle is, it dissolves when it's accepted completely. Now, it doesn't mean that you kill it. And it doesn't mean that you eliminate anything. It's simply the energy that was that feeling was in a form, loses its form as that feeling. And in many cases, immediately becomes presence. The feeling may arise again, perhaps created by a further thought. And the same thing happens. It's immediately allowed and is transformed into presence. So nothing is denied. The feeling is there for as long as it needs to be there. But the beautiful thing is, it doesn't need to be there that long anymore. It does not need to be perpetuated. It's there, and then it dissolves. And then, as you live in the state of presence, to a large extent, things that would be called very human feelings don't really happen that much anymore. Intense anger with situations and people, reactivity, depression, moving from happy one day, unhappy the next, depressed, you're the greatest one day, the next day you're the most awful, the most dreadful, miserable worm that ever existed. And all these things that are so normal, all the dysfunction in relationships, the continuous need for conflict, many of those things will be dissolving. It doesn't mean that you become less human, because you become more human, because what replaces that is a deep sense of oneness. Love, compassion arise and are there a lot of the time, if not continuously yet. And those are the deepest feelings or emotions, that they are so deep that I don't call them emotions. They are part of what in India is sometimes called your natural state of inner connectedness with being. And so you don't become less human when suffering and dysfunction gradually leave you. You do not become less human. You become more fully human. Suffering leaves you. Pain lingers for a while. The difference between pain and suffering is suffering needs an entity, a me with a story. Pain lingers. The grief that you feel, at first you experience it as suffering. The moment you accept it, the link between a story in the head and the pain is broken, and all that remains is a pain. And even that you might not even label pain anymore. It's simply a feeling, and it's accepted. So you're becoming more fully human, not less human. If negative feelings were leaving you, those so-called negative feelings that don't feel good, feelings that cover up your natural state of connectedness with being, if they were leaving you, but you were becoming deadened to the world around you, no light shining through you, no compassion, empathy, love, complete openness towards all human beings, that would be an illusion. You would be deadening yourself, desensitizing yourself. And what this is about is the opposite of all that. It's a complete opening. So, welcome to becoming fully human. It's a question of how we use words. We can say we are now becoming fully human. Yes. I call it the flowering of human consciousness. Or we could choose other words and we could say we are going beyond the human condition. We are stepping beyond that. It's simply a question of how you want to use words. But the main thing is that you see the difference between denying or cutting yourself off from feelings and thereby having the illusion that you don't have them anymore, and fully saying yes to them. You see the difference?
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. In the place of accepting all that is without resistance, I notice that there's a place in me that is not as motivated to take action. And it could be from being willing to stand up in front of an audience and ask a question, or voting, or writing a letter to the editor, or any number of things. So my question is, what keeps the passion and motivation alive in the place of acceptance?
Thank you. Good question. Now, you may have noticed that there's great passion in what I do. And action that arises out of presence is energized and very effective action. One could say there is great passion, there is great energy in action that arises out of presence. There can also be great energy in action that arises out of fear, out of anger, out of some form of resistance to what is. There can be enormous and qualitatively a very different energy field. It is true, perhaps, that you said you find yourself, perhaps there's a tendency, observing a tendency in yourself of doing less as presence arises. Not so often does action happen. A lot of the action that comes out of the egoic state is really unnecessary. A lot of the hyperactivity of our Western civilization, and most of the planet is covered now by Western civilization, a lot of the hyperactivity that are all those things truly necessary for a full human existence? If you look at, and of course, if you look at all that, life in big urban centers, the continuous running around, everybody is under stress, but everybody is engaged in what they believe to be very important things. But there is a fear because you're never quite catching up with the next important thing that you need to do. So there's a running around of that. A lot of energy, yes. A lot of unhappiness also being created through that. A lot of people living hell for themselves, and it becomes so normal that they don't know it anymore. And as presence arises, the motivating factor for taking action changes dramatically. It's not that action becomes no longer possible or that you're no longer capable of action, although I must admit it happened to me for a couple of years. I went into complete beingness or presence. I lost the ability to take action, not that I saw it as a loss, but other people saw it as a loss in me. I had no guidance, so I got overtaken by presence, and nobody could tell me that you can still be active. Gradually I learned for myself that presence can be a state out of which very effective and passionate action happens, but probably it will be far fewer actions that come out of presence than actions, all the myriad activities and actions that come out of the state of resistance, of the state of no, that need to arrive at the future desperately because I haven't found myself yet. driven by fear, the fear of being nobody, the fear that you might not make it, the fear of survival, the fear of not enough, driven by that, creating perhaps a huge enterprise, and just as you create it, you die of a nervous breakdown or whatever. But and all the people associated with your great enterprise are unhappy. So it looks great when you look at it, and then look at the inner state of the people inside. They're all driven. Is there an ease? Is there an aliveness? Are they flowering as human beings? No. So all that is, I call, karmic action. Karmic action arises out of a denial of life, of what is. It's resistant, induced, motivated by resistance and needing the future. And then you have action that arises out of presence. Karmic action creates more karma. In other words, it arises out of suffering, ultimately, and creates more suffering. The energy behind it is the energy of suffering. Karma means action, action, reaction, action, reaction. So that is karmic action. Ultimately, any action that is a means to an end is karmic action. Any action where the outcome is more important to you than the doing now is karmic action. And that is the action of most of humanity, also, with a few exceptions, of course. Something else is arising. So that's important to know, the difference between action motivated by presence and karmic action. Whenever the now is denied its primacy, not the primacy of the now and the fullness is not recognized, it's reduced to a means to an end. Any action then is karmic and produces more suffering in yourself and others who come into contact with that kind of action. But you may be an extremely busy person, of course, in that state, and most people are. Then there is the state of presence, and only necessary action arises out of that. You mentioned some examples, writing a letter to a newspaper, and you could very well write a letter to a newspaper from a state of presence rather than a state of perhaps great anger about a situation. And from a state of presence, you can show them how you see that from your point of view of presence, and there will be great power in what you write. It won't make other people angry too, and thus contribute to more, because imagine you write an angry letter, maybe fully justified, because the world is full of things you could get angry about, full of things. So you write a letter that is angry to a newspaper. Quite a few people read that, and in many of them the energy field of anger will linger as they go to work after reading your letter, which may have been totally right in what it says. You were justified in being angry, just an example. And the next thing, that very same energy field goes into their pain body, and the next interaction at work expresses that anger, and it goes into the next one. The next pain body is awakened. There was one beautiful episode of, I believe it's called a TV series, Touched by an Angel. I don't want to give you all the details. It's one angry or one person in a state of great negativity, how that person influences the whole sequence of events. One person commits suicide as a result of just that, going into a restaurant, how it spreads to others. And then it's reversed in the second part of that episode, how it could have been in a state of allowing, of non-resistance. So you can write a letter which expresses the same, but points to a greater truth, makes people aware of what's going on, because if it makes you angry, it's likely that it'll be some part of human insanity that is out there, and there's a lot of that. And so it could awaken people into realizing, yes, they can see the insanity, you point it out, but it will be written from a greater truth, a deeper truth, than only be getting angry at the insanity. And that will truly make a difference. So this is just, or you may find it is pointless writing this letter. Perhaps the newspaper lives on scandal. Perhaps that's the very thing why they sell papers, because they are bought by paying bodies. It's possible. So in many cases, you might see that and say there's no point in writing a letter to a newspaper. The best country for that is England. They have the best and worst newspapers in the world. And the worst British papers are really bad. And they are designed to create negative emotion in the reader. And almost every headline that you read in the morning, you go to the newsstand and you see, "You bastards," or something like that. And millions of people buy and get angry. The National Enquirer, compared to that, is the highest magazine. So this is just an example. So action happens, effective, but more than just becoming part of what you're complaining about. So you can point out, and then something deeper will be awakened in this case, the person who reads the letter. So, and also in the state of presence, it will be clearer to you whether there is any point in action. The beautiful thing about action rising out of presence is a lot of the action is spontaneous. And you may find yourself saying or doing something, and you hadn't even thought about it beforehand. You might yourself just getting up and doing it. And it's always just right. It's never superfluous. It doesn't create more suffering for yourself or others. That is the beauty. But it is true, you probably won't be quite as active as in the old state. That's true. But it will be quality action, good action.
Very good. Thank you, Eckhart. Bye.
I have found myself over the years sort of compiling this mental list of terrible things to make me unhappy. And so a few of them are bad things that happened to me, but I haven't had that many terrible things happen to me. So a lot of them are things I've heard about happening to other people or read about happening to other people. And I find myself sometimes just walking along perfectly happy and then thinking, I shouldn't be happy because there's this list of all these terrible things in my mind. Or I may wake up in the middle of the night and they'll all start, coming into my mind one by one. And I get a lot of pain, very grief-stricken. And when I read your book, I thought, after reading what you said, I thought, well, maybe by continuing to go through this mental list, I'm feeding my pain body with these thoughts. So at that point, I started, the thoughts still came up, and there would be that initial pain. But I didn't compulsively keep going through with the list, and eventually the pain would dissipate, as you said. But I've always not been completely sure if this is the right thing. And then this morning you said something that confused me. You were talking about how one might want to contemplate the events of last week and feel the pain come up if it came up and allow it, and then perhaps this shift would occur. So now I'm wondering, well, maybe I should be contemplating this list of things. I'm not sure what the difference is.
Oh, right. Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Basically, your practice was the right one. You observed what the mind was doing. You realized that all those thoughts were feeding your pain body, and there could be no end to negative thoughts if you want to have them, about your own life even. I could find reasons in my mind, these are just mental perspectives, that prove to me and others that I'm a miserable person and my life is dreadful. I could prove also, of course, if I take another perspective, mental perspective, that I'm one of the luckiest people in the world and everything is wonderful. I could put a convincing case for both positions, and everybody here could do that for themselves. You can convince yourself that your life is dreadful and adopt that position, and you select then from your experience all the things that fit in with your life being dreadful, and there'll be many. And then you can choose to think along those lines, and the pain body loves it. It gobbles up every thought. And of course then you feel even more dreadful, because then the pain body energizes those very thoughts. It's a vicious circle. It amplifies those thoughts and it feeds on those thoughts and then gives them back to the mind. Or you could think about the state of the world and find a list of why this is must surely be the worst planet of all planets in this galaxy, if not all galaxies. And you might even think perhaps it's a mental home for other planets. I may well be right, who knows? But there's no doubt that you could find a long list of why being here is dreadful, and you just don't want to be here, but you are. But you can have this long list of dreadful things, one after another, hell, to prove to you that you're living on a planet that is hell. Not difficult to find that list, very easy. So you can have those thoughts and continuously revive them. And for quite a few years, I think you said, you lived in that way, and then you realized what you were doing and realized you were feeding the pain body, and that's exactly what it was. And then more awareness came to it, and then you broke the cycle between thought patterns and pain body, and then that went. Now, when I talked about the events of last week, the emotion of these events, the memory of these events is still very fresh, and this is a case where we can make a difference. There are certain situations that require healing. Situations, they may be in your own life, there may be a person in your immediate environment who is ill in one way or another, suffering in one way or another. There may be an immediate event in your collective environment, a great disaster as it happened last week, that had an enormous ripple effect of suffering going out, even many people suffering who were not immediately connected to it, that great suffering going out, not just this country. Even my mother, who lives in Europe, cried, and many people suffer and still carry that burden all over the world. So here we have a true immediate situation that is you are more or less directly involved in. We are just a few miles, 90 miles or whatever from New York City, and it just happens that we are having this gathering close to that place at this time. So things are deeply connected, and there's a reason. So this is something that concerns us directly. It's not some list that you seek in your mind of what's wrong with the world. This is immediate. And these things occasionally may appear in your own life. Somebody close to you in deep suffering. And then it is very helpful to hold that situation or that person in consciousness. There is the situation. And although it seems unacceptable, if somebody very close to you is suffering deeply, it seems this can't be, it mustn't be, he mustn't suffer, she shouldn't be suffering like that. Maybe a child of yours is suffering, and a father or mother feels this is so dreadful, he shouldn't suffer like that. But he or she is. The event of last week, things like that shouldn't happen, but there it is. And then hold it in consciousness. As you hold it in consciousness, there are two possibilities. You may already be able to hold that situation in consciousness and totally accept the suchness of that situation. That's what happened. Or the suffering person close to you, because thousands of people suffering is just a multiplication. That's human suffering. So you hold that there's the suffering. And you may be able to accept it so deeply immediately that there is a spaciousness around that person or that situation. And suddenly you sense an inner depth. And at the core, there is a sense of peace or serenity, which so many people, as I pointed out a few times, who have faced imminent death have reported that at the last moments they found that great peace and serenity. Not all, but many. Most of them actually found death, so they could never tell us about it. And all we see is the dreadful externals event, seemingly dreadful. And so there's that deep peace, and that is, the situation is then released. And you stay with that, the peace that you sense. And there's not much thinking in that, just that. But if it's not possible for you, and it may not be, because that event was so recent and so drastic and so painful, that when you hold that event in consciousness, you cannot immediately accept it totally. So the first thing, as you hold that event, or if it's a person, a suffering person in consciousness, the first thing you notice is great sadness. You yourself suffer with it, with that event, or with that person, and you feel this, it feels heavy and sad. And you may feel like weeping. That, of course, is a sign that you resisted what is, but you couldn't accept it. So that's all it is. You couldn't accept that, and so you feel that. And then you move into that feeling, the sadness, and say, that's how it is. There's the sadness. I allow that also. I allow that to be. The suchness of this feeling. This is what is. And then that takes you beyond it. So that is practiced when there are situations around you that require healing, that touch you immediately. If there's anything in the world that touches you deeply, affects you deeply, you can do that. You can do it for the entire world. You can hold the entire world, this planet, in consciousness and see the incredible suffering that is taking place at this very moment in many parts of the world. At this very moment, every second, 1 or 2 people are dying. Probably, I think it's 2 every second. This second, 1 or 2 people dying. No, 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 no. Some are in suffering. Some, at this moment, realize who they are beyond form. And so much suffering being inflicted at this very moment by humans on other humans. People in hospitals, people who don't even have hospitals, people in prison camps, people being killed at this very moment. It's all happening now, somewhere on the planet. Good things are also happening here. But you can hold the planet, which to a large extent still a great deal of disharmony, conflict, an enormous amount of suffering. You can hold the entire planet in consciousness instead of going through it unless something concerns you directly and is immediate. Instead of going through it bit by bit, all the areas of suffering, you would have to spend continuous, all your life in meditation. Take it as one, and the entire planet and humanity, you see it. And that's how it is. And it's not only that it's suffering now, it has been going on since time immemorial. And you see that also. And it's going to go on indefinitely unless you become transformed. And where and when do you become transformed? Now, at this moment. How? I'm still suffering myself. By accepting the suchness of this moment. Transformation is immediate. Nothing else can save the world than that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I suggest that the few remaining, thank you so much, the few remaining questions we may address tomorrow morning. Listen to that beautiful sound. And just listen. No need to label it in any way. Just listen to that gentleness. Just the sound. And the awareness, without which it wouldn't even be there. And that's who you are, the awareness, without which that sound wouldn't be there. Would anything be there? The whole world is created out of that. And when you know who you are, you know yourself as that, quite a harmonious world comes out of that. When you don't know yourself, when you don't know yourself as that, an illusory world comes out of that.